guys, it's Mike. Before we get started today, I want to let you know about a new podcast by Mr. Build It, Next Door Neighbors. Check it out on anywhere you listen to podcasts. Highly suggest it. Last night I was shoveling snow, listening to the episode about how he built his channel, just like we're about to talk about right now. We go into a little bit more detail, but I'm excited for you guys to check it out. Thanks so much. Enjoy the show.
That's Drew.
And that's Mike.
And that's Mr. Build It.
What's up, guys?
Alex Mazhukin is the man, also known as Mr. Build It, and since starting his YouTube channel in 2016, he's built projects from a child's toy treasure chest to a surprise bathroom remodel for a veteran. Added to that list is a community of 515,000 subscribers and nearly 30 million views. While he'll humbly tell you that he's just a guy without formal training, he knows all about courage and sweat, how to not be afraid to fail. Check his channel for new uploads 3 times a month and learn to build some cool things of your own. Alex, thanks so much for your time today.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours. We're very excited about this. We say this too often, but we're just excited because we love YouTube, and getting to watch content to talk about on a podcast is like so fun. Yours is very easy to watch, and you have built a super successful community, but it didn't start there, right? You grew up in Russia and immigrated to the United States. So let's start back in Russia. How long did you live in Russia for?
Well, I was born in Russia. I moved to the States when I was 7, so in 1996. Yeah, I mean, I have a few memories. I'm still bilingual, but I only speak to my parents in Russian.
Do your kids speak?
What do you remember about growing up?
So I remember our house. I remember the house that we lived in, where we had a pond to the side of our house, and we were too poor to have ice skates. And so when the pond froze over, we would ice skate on our shoes. I remember falling into the pond, into the pocket holes of water. I remember not having water guns and having actually like 50cc syringes, which I don't know where they came from, but would use those syringes as water guns. But I remember as a kid, because keep in mind, I have 3 kids who are always asking for, unhealthy snacks. I remember as a kid spending my entire time outside, running into the house, and the thing my mama would give us for a snack would be a piece of rye bread and a raw egg that she would puncture a hole on top. So you would eat the rye bread and then you would basically drink the raw egg. So we're basically doing protein. We're doing protein at the age of like 6. Like Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, dude, yeah. That's like Arnold Schwarzenegger style. So
something else I wanted to ask about real quick, since you're talking about your Russian background, you mentioned that in your sauna building video. And I was curious just about your experience of owning a sauna now for 3 months, growing up with one. For an American, that's something very unusual to me. I've been to one once and I was not too keen on it the first time I tried it. So I'd like sort of the expert's perspective on it, especially now that you've owned one for a few months.
You know what's weird is, so growing up, I had to kind of wear 2 hats. I had to have friends that we would use things like, these are my American friends and these are my Russian friends, right? So that was the way when I moved to the States. And what was interesting is when I was like, I remember like being like 21 and I was still in Seattle, and my friends would go to my parents' house and I'll be like, hey, we're going to do a Russian sauna. And my American friends thought it was the weirdest thing, because you like, imagine there's like a thing that your family does, like there's an SNL skit out there where like, hey, listen, my they're kind of weird. Like, so there's a skit where like all the family members kiss each other on the lips when somebody comes into the house. And so it was the equivalency to like that kind of weirdness where we're like, listen, man, we're going to go in our shorts into this like 200-degree thing. We're going to sit pretty close to each other. And then after about 45 minutes into it, where we're like in the borderline of like passing out, what we're going to do is we're going to get this dehydrated branches that's like wrapped up in like a bundle, like a bouquet. And then we're going to hit each other with it.
Oh my goodness.
Because it's like a therapeutic thing where like it like exfoliates your skin. It helps get some toxins out. But like you have to pay this weird things. Like, listen, you're going to be laying down face down. We're both going to be in our swimming trunks. I'm going to be wearing a hat because it's going to be very hot, like a wool thing. I'm going to wear gloves too because the water is going to be hot. And then I'm going to whip you on your back. But don't make it weird. Like, so it's those kind of things that like I had those little two sides of my story.
Well, at least you set the precedent. You're like, don't make it weird. It definitely didn't make it weird at all.
Yeah. And we have to take a shower afterwards together. Like, it's just, no, that's not tomato.
It's a big, saunaing is like a big part of the culture in Russia, 100%. Right? Yeah.
100%. It's anything in the Eastern culture. The Russian culture, it's more of like it's the equivalence to the American culture of like the hot tub, right? So
Mhm.
I think somebody knows somebody with a hot tub, so it's not uncommon. And so the sauna was kind of like the hot tub. Now the Uzbekistan and the Kyrgyzstan and all these stands out there, their culture is a little bit more rooted in it, where it's like it's an all day event. Like you come
Hmm.
over, 12 hours, we're gonna drink hot tea, sit in the sauna, come out, drink hot tea, sit in the sauna. So it's a back and forth. You're spending like 8 to 12 hours. In my culture, it was more of like the hot tub equivalency.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Mhm.
I could kind of tell the the extent, the effort to which you built out that sauna at home was so
Yeah.
impressive, especially because I'm thinking one of my other favorite videos that I watched of yours was the rebuild of the camper. And that's
Uh-huh.
so like so much on a budget and then just going all out with the sauna. I was like, all right, this guy really cares about sauna. I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I've always wanted to, I have certain things in the back of my mind that like a wish list that I've always wanted to do. And in fact, the whole veteran thing was like a wish list that's been there for forever. And just every once in a while I'll do something silly. Like I have one idea in the back of my mind where like, you know what I want to do is like for something like that, the equivalency of like ASMR. You guys know what ASMR is, where it's
Uh-huh.
like satisfying to the, but like something along those equivalency, nothing to do with sound, but like I want to do a video about like knocking on a random, stranger who has like 5 acres of land and just be like, I'm gonna mow your lawn. And so it's just gonna be a 12-minute video of me just mowing his like 5 acres of land, just like these. Because if I was to vacuum, carpet, I'm gonna create these perfect lines. So if I'm gonna mow a lawn, I mean, we're gonna make diamonds, we're gonna make whatever.
Drew and I
That's
talked about
that's
that like
awesome.
all
Yes,
summer.
I tell Mike about that every summer. I cut my parents' grass all the time,
Yeah,
and I love doing that. I love approaching it differently every time. I'm like, I'm going to make the
yeah.
lines different. You got to cross them each time, so you make sure you get an even cut. My favorite way to do it though is they have this big, great, huge tree in the middle of their front yard, and I love just starting under the tree and just doing a circle
Circles,
around
yeah,
and around and around.
yeah,
It looks
yeah.
so good. It looks so
Yeah,
nice.
it's fantastic. No, it's these weird, satisfying things that it just kind of takes you away.
It'd be awesome to have,
I
like
was
drone
also
footage.
thinking I wish that you had smell-o-vision on YouTube for the Japanese process of curing the wood. I bet that smells so good when you do that.
What's smell-o-vision?
Where you can just like get the scent.
Oh,
Then
oh, like
you
like
do
a, like a
the
scent. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. No, it smells like a nice humidifier inside of it for sure. It definitely smells like a nice humidifier, and it retains heat too. Like so, you'll pull up there. It'll be like 32 degrees, freedom height, if you want to call it, and but it'll be like I don't know, like 55, 60 inside. So it's a solid. It's a solid sauna.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I meant too also for I might pronounce it wrong, the shosugiban, that
Shishugi,
process.
yeah, Shishugi, yeah.
I bet that smells so good during that process of charring the wood.
It's actually interesting enough that there's not a lot of. I mean, every time I've done it was always outside, so maybe a lot
Hmm.
of it's lost. But it's
All right.
definitely a cool thing because that technique was created by the Japanese to make sure the because they would use it for roofing and stuff. So that it was a fire retardant, it was mold resistant, water resistant. You know what I mean? It's kind of incredible that you just calcify wood and then you just get so many benefits out of it.
It really is. But I feel like I'm totally getting off track, and I definitely want to go back
We're
to growing
gonna
up
be
in
talking about
Russia.
Brad.
And
We're gonna be talking about Brad nailers here and like drills in the back, shop
like
talk.
5 minutes in, everyone's like,
we're
"What are they talking about?"
we're on to it. Is interesting that there's so many amazing engineering feats that have come out of Japan, from like from the sword creation to even like calcifying wood to make it so it's all of those features. It's unreal. But let's go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say they're the most disciplined culture I think out there. You know what I mean? The Russian culture is a very hard and cruel, and I don't know, cruel is the wrong word. They're very cold, I guess, culture where like you don't apologize. You don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if you guys ever traveled to like Spain or anything like that. Like you bump somebody in a subway, they're not saying I'm sorry. Like it's a very sensitive word. Like you don't use it loosely. Like excuse me. And so like the Japanese, like I heard like the guy that did the what do they call it? The Michelin restaurants, like the Michelin star, whatever they
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
like these guys in Japan, like these artists, like whatever that is like you do one thing repetitively for the rest of your life, that one day you might perfect it. It's so perfect, and you'll be known for that. So like they're the most disciplined. They got food right, they got swords right, they got craftsmanship right. I mean, they just do it all right on the. I mean, what do the Russian culture have? We have chicken jello. Every recipe has mayo and beets. Like, and we get saunas. I guess I don't know. We didn't even come out that.
But you've perfected your own sauna, so that's.
Oh, I tried. I mean, I tried. It was definitely a work of labor.
So then you leave Russia, you enter the United States, and you end up in Seattle, Washington, just on the south end of the lake, and you're in Renton. Why did your parents choose to move to Seattle?
So the way immigrants kind of work is, and I'll be bold enough to speak for the majority of immigrants, is it's usually somebody knows somebody, right? So it was my aunt and uncle who from Russia, and I don't know exactly how they came to the States, but there are certain hub states in the country. California is one of them. Sacramento is one of them. I'm sorry, not California. Sacramento is one of them. Seattle is one of them. Florida, I don't remember which state or city in Florida, but all of a sudden that's like the big hub point that you just kind of show up, right? And my aunt and uncle, my mom's sister, they moved to the States a few years before us. And it was just that process. My middle brother was born with developmental delay. And one of his lungs was also, there's a lot of things that comes with it, but one of his lungs was underinflated or deflated, if you will. So he's kind of working with one lung. And so my aunt and uncle were like, hey, come over here. They'll get the proper surgery and whatever. And so, yeah, they did the whole visa application for us. They got us an apartment and furnished it for us. So when we moved to the States with like 2 handbags, and I think my parents had like $1,000 in 1996. Fun fact, same year Tupac Shakur died. So I don't know if that's relevant or not, but I don't know what you guys' hip hop culture here is. But and then from that point on, that's where we just kind of landed. And so my dad kind of piggybacked off of my aunt and uncle in terms of they did jobs together and they started a business together, and it kind of evolved from there. And so that was Seattle, a little area called SeaTac, right where the airport is. White Center is the neighborhood I was in. And then after that, my dad worked construction and a chop shop, 2 jobs at the same time, and for 4 years, and they got themselves their first house, and that's my childhood house. Basically, they still live in that same house.
Wow. And how about you as a kid? What did you get into? How did you spend your free time, and what was it like? What do you remember about the transition coming from Russia as a 9-year-old? You said.
Yeah, 7-year-old in the States, right?
7-year-old, excuse me.
Yeah. I'm the youngest boy of 3. My middle brother is the one with the developmental delayed. My oldest brother, Igor, which is funny because he didn't want to be known as Igor, so he gave himself an American name. So he was called Tommy through high school.
Oh, wow.
And it was. My brother was a smart kid. He got his master's. Schooling was very difficult for me, which kind of led me to pursue a career in something. Got my degree in respiratory therapy, and then I started my YouTube thing. But so as a kid, I was very my middle boy is kind of the closest thing to me, where he's the one that, like I always said, his imagination is so crazy that he's definitely going to put pizza on the moon. You know what I mean? But like. You know what I mean? Or he's going to do interpretive dance. Like, I don't know. My oldest boy might go to like MIT, but my like youngest boy is going to put pizza on the moon. But so that's the way my brain worked as a kid. It's like, I couldn't focus. Fun fact about me is I never learned my multiplication tables. Like I have a weird thing where I can't envision numbers in my head. So if you're giving me 2 even numbers, I can make that equation in my head, or solve that equation in my head. But you give me 2 odd numbers, I don't know what to do. I can't even see those numbers in my head. I have to like write it down. So as a kid, I was very ADD. It's an understatement because everybody gets diagnosed with it, but I definitely was a kid that could have benefited from being like held back a grade or 2 just to let my brain kind of settle or rise or develop or cure, if you want to call it. But just kind of out there. My grandma and grandpa and my dad and mom made jokes like, because I never memorized my multiplication tables, they're like, you're going to be a garbage man one day. That's what you're going to do. You're going to be, in their perspective, that was like the lowest of the totem pole, which is weird. But they're like, it was just kind of And I think a little bit of that I kind of carried in my mind, where I'm like, kind of being put down like that. As a kid, you don't recognize it, but you still somehow it clicks that this is a degrading kind of thing. So I was wired definitely differently, all over the box, but I guess I found something that worked with the way my brain was wired.
Yeah, it seems like it, because one of the things I picked up on from watching your content is that you emphasized prep a lot and planning ahead, and what you
Yeah.
do requires a lot of precision and a lot of, I
Math.
would assume, mathematics. Yes, it's a lot of
Yeah.
measuring. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of it. It has to be, there's no avoiding it. Like I was just on my friend's house yesterday. He was welding some stairs because I've welded stairs in my house and a railing. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I wish math came easy to me, where things like geometry and stuff like that, I could now use it as an adult, but back then my brain wasn't wired for it. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I would say I'm a proud specimen of a person who definitely should have been, held back in school a little bit.
Well, I think it also talks to like there's not every path is the correct path for every kid.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
like I I I like the math and science side, but if you ask me to write anything, it's going to be
Hmm.
terribly written. Even today in my working life, it's like work emails don't come easy to me. Those things are harder for me. And it's just every kid, it develops differently and can do it.
Yeah.
Drew has an uncanny ability to like do a ton of things, but like his writing is so easy and eloquent. And like he can write an intro in like 2 minutes. It would take me 5 hours. I'd have to do a bunch of like rewrites, and my wife would have to proofread it for me. And it's just not,
Yeah.
not everything comes easy to every kid. It's interesting
Yeah.
how you've come full circle and not being able to
Yeah.
do that as a kid and using it in your everyday life.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I'm a person who, I, I'll understand. I'll always try to reverse engineer things, and that kind of helped me and kind of was a problem because I I've always had that bone in my body where I was like, I bet I could figure that out, right? Like, how is that built? Like you say, hey, can you build me a bar in the garage? And I've never built a bar, but for some weird reason, I have this weird confidence about like, I bet you I can figure it out, though I've never built it. But that I think a lot of it has come with the whole perspective of like, we have the internet, so I could learn it. That's not a problem at all. But then when it comes to mathematics in what I build and the planning stages, a lot of it has to do with finding little tips, tricks, and hacks. So, for example, my middle boy, like I said, he's definitely wired like me, where he's smart, he's creative, but I always put it this way, he doesn't, nobody taught him how to use his brain. The brain is a tool. And as weird as it sounds, like, I think you have to be taught how to use it. And with him, like we'll be driving and my oldest boy, Jack, who is school comes way too easy. He doesn't feel challenged. He's like, hey dad, could we do math problems? I'd be cool. And I'll keep it simple for me. So I'd be like, what's 8 plus 10? You know what I mean? Like, and then my young boy, my middle boy, because I have 3 kids now, but he will say, okay, so Beckham, now we'll do it with you. And we'll keep it simple. We'll say it's 2 plus 3, whatever. And I'll teach him. I'll be like, hey man, just use your finger. So like, get your hand under the table and be like, okay, if I say what's 3 plus 5, find 3 here and 5, and then count them. And I'm 30, almost 3 years old, and I still do that. You know what I mean? So like, it's easier for me to relate to him because what I do for my day job, I have to find these quick little simple things. Like if I have a 3/4 inch top board and it's going to be overlapping as a butt joint over another 3/4 inch board, and I need to find out what the distance is. Well, 3/4 inch plus 3/4 inch is 1.5 inches. So it's like that's just like my go-to number. Like I don't have to add it. Like it's just I memorized it. That's all it is. And so I'm trying to teach him another way of just like finding these little, quick ways out of a hard problem.
And construction, general construction,
Yeah.
is infamous for having repetitive uses of the same numbers. Like, 2x4 is the dimensions are all the same. That's why they call it dimensional lumber.
Yeah.
The depth and heights and sizes of sheets of plywood are all about the same. So you can get into those rhythms and you get that. That's pretty neat.
Very quickly.
And so I want to go back
Yeah.
to the construction. So your dad worked in construction and in the chop shop. Was that
Yeah.
your first introduction to like tools and or the construction trade?
Yeah. Yeah, in a way. He was the first primary person in my life that I saw that they were doing that. What's interesting is whenever you live in a family if you're from family of immigrants, they always want like anybody would, something better for you, right? Because they look at like construction or a chop shop or any kind of trades as like a last resort, right? Like this is just
Yeah.
like, I have to do this in order for you to have that because I didn't get a college degree and so on and so forth. It's weird because nowadays we're seeing a shortage in trades, like a scarce shortage where they like industries like Home Depot, they don't know what's going to happen 10 years from today, where all these people who own plumbing businesses stuff like, what are they going to do? Like there's nobody to replace them. There's a lot of pride to be taken with these trades because I've seen guys who started plumbing businesses and flooring businesses, and I mean they're master craftsmen. I mean everything is not necessarily that they're doing art with plumbing, but they have it set up in a way where it's so fluid. They have the right tool, it's done in 30 minutes that would have taken an average Joe, 3 weeks to do, and there's a lot of pride with that. So with my dad, that's what that was. I had a natural inclination to automotives. So I was that kid who was looking at Hot Import Night magazine and Import Tuner magazine. So these decked out cars. You guys are smiling because we're from the same era.
Yeah, man.
Right. So like that's what I was into because my dad worked in this chop shop, and so he's welding two Toyota Camrys together to make one. So that's where like I was inclined, but my dad didn't see the need to feed that part of me. He almost wanted to suppress it, in my perspective, I think, because I would constantly come down in the garage, see him working, and I'd be like, "Hey, Dad, can I help?" And it was very rare that he'd let me like unscrew a bolt or something like that, or loosen something. So to him, he was like, "Don't worry about this stuff. Go do well in school." And so I think the downfall on his part was he didn't recognize that there is an opportunity to, I don't know, like there's an opportunity to invest in an interest, and you can only trust that person. Like I tell my kids this all the time. I was like, I don't care if you go to college or whatnot. I mean, you have to have a plan B. But if you go in the trades, I want you to be the master of that trade. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing bad about you saying, I don't want to go and get a business degree or a master's degree. I want you to go into, if you want to be a welder, figure out how to scale that welding business in a way that one day you don't have to be the guy running the wire. You got somebody else coming in and doing it, and you'll create a multi-million-dollar business. Like that's the way I want their mind to work.
Oh, I would argue that all day, that if you graduate from college or you go to high school, college, and then you got your master's degree and entered the business world with a master's, and if you didn't go to college and you started as a journeyman electrician, and that 8 years later or 6 years later, they check the pay scale that time, they'd be the same.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
especially today, if you can go in as a journeyman electrician or a plumber or any trade, and you focus and you have an idea that you want to own your own business, there's almost a guarantee that you're going to be making much more money than the average college student.
Yeah, I think an average welder goes in an industry at like 100 and something bucks an hour. Like that's the go-to right away.
Yeah. I think one of the highest paid jobs in the world is an underwater welder. So if you become a welder and then you become a specialist, they're getting paid like I think the starting salary is like $240,000 a year.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. There's a thing I always go back and forth. Like, do I tell my kids to go to college? Do I not tell them to go to college? Do I regret going and getting a respiratory therapy degree and then doing YouTube? And the reality is like, listen, doing YouTube, it's like rolling rolling dice on a lottery or something like that, or a craps table. It's like it's such a gamble that you got to outwork the people in your industry. Like you got to come out with the next best thing. You can't do what Sarah Dietschy's doing. You can't do what Casey Neistat doing. You can't do what Peter McKinnon's doing. You got to be the next thing that's way better and then blows them out of the water. Like I don't know too many people. Like when I started YouTube, I started doing what I saw other people in my trade were doing. Meaning like not trade, but like my circle. Meaning I saw YouTube videos of people who were building coffee tables. So what did I do? I started DIYing building coffee tables. And then I saw people do dining room tables and dressers, and I did them too. And the moral of the story is my videos never took off. It took me 60 videos to finally realize, wait, I'm doing the same thing that everybody's already doing, meaning I'm doing the stuff that a saturated market is already performing and putting out. What I need to be doing, stuff that nobody is DIYing. And when I started, what nobody was DIYing was nobody's really DIYing. They're experimenting with it, and I'm never gonna say I innovated, but a lot of people were experimenting, but the the operating expenses were too high. So what I mean by it is like I started DIY experimenting with home reno stuff, but that's so costly, right? For you to build a coffee table, a DIY coffee table, it's probably going to cost you maybe like under $100, right? But then if you're going to be like, I'm going to build a shower, well, now you're going into thousands. And then can
Yeah.
you do this week after week? So now scaling is a different story. You got to get funding. You got to make sure you get your business model is all set up properly. So it's that's when I go and I was like, oh, like think Mr. Beast. What Mr. Beast does is Mr. Beast goes, okay, last person takes a hand of a car, he gets $100,000. Surprise a random stranger with $50,000. Like we're gonna do big things, but my job is to figure out how to do those big things that you could actually pay for.
A great way to look at it. I wanna go to your degree. So what the choice to go into the medical field, was that push because your parents were like, you got to go get a degree? And I know there's like the concept from an immigrant family that being a doctor, a lawyer, one of these prestigious kind of roles in society. Is that what forced you down that path to become a respiratory? And was your brother's lung, because I feel like being in a respiratory therapy is a very niche, specific thing to go get a degree for, unless you have, and it makes sense that you said that, unless you have someone who has something that was affected in their like lungs.
Yeah, I wish I could say that's how I got into it, or like my brother. I wish I had that sob story where like my brother was born development delay with an underinflated lung, and that's when I was like, I'm gonna find a cure for it and get it. No, I wish that was the case. It really wasn't. The medical industry. I don't think my parents pushed me to it, but I think what it was is my parents said you got to go to college, right? And I've uh, I bounced around 5 majors. I went from business accounting. I was a stockbroker intern at a company, Smith and Barney in Seattle. I jumped around a bunch of different things because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I spent like 2 months in a pyramid scheme somehow. I don't know how I landed in that. like I bounced around so many things because my brain bounced, right? So if my brain thoughts were always like, I'm excited about everything like ADD would be like, oh, I love this. I like off-roading now. Oh, guess what? I like dirt biking now. Oh, you know what? Fun fact, I like finger painting. Like it's just, you get so excited with that kind of brain that when you're figuring out what you want to do in life, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because you get to experience a lot of things, but it's bad because you get yourself in a pyramid scheme after 2 months and trying to explain to people how the pyramids were some of the strongest structures in society.
Moral of the story, kids. Just end up in a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. You know that scene in Waterboy when Adam Sandler is like talking to these kids about football. And he goes, yeah, when the quarterback's at the hike, I take the ball and I make sure I run into the other end zone. And the coach sums it up. He goes, "That's to prove it to you kids, don't do drugs." So that's me. That's me as like growing up as an adult, like using my brain, which is a tool that you need to have a license for, I guess.
Don't do pyramid schemes. The moral of that story: just focus and don't become in the pyramid itself.
So, what was I going with? Yeah, it was definitely a thing that I bounced around so many things that when my parents are like, you got to go to college. I've tried a bunch of things that didn't work, and then finally I was like, no. What I need to do is to finish a degree quick, is to go into medicine. So I was like, I started taking my prereqs for nursing, and in Seattle, I don't know if the rest of the states are like that as well, but like it was so competitive that like you have to get like a 3.9 GPA, and then you got to get a placement scoring on your whatever for the program. And on top of that, there's still way too many applicants that they said, okay, we're also going to do a pyramid, or not pyramid, we're just talking about pyramids. We're also going to do a lotto system where we're going to draw your name out of hat. And being an impatient person with ADD, I was like, fine, screw it. I'm going to find something else. So I was working at Applebee's while going to college, and ran into one of the waiters over there, and he was going to school for respiratory therapy. And fortunately, he had a nice story where he's like, I have asthma and I want to work with kids with asthma and I want to help them. And I was like, I don't care about kids. I want to get paid. I want to cash checks. And so and so I kind of went, okay, well, this seems like an accelerated learning thing. Let's do that. It was a program. So that's how I got into respiratory therapy. And then lo and behold, later on, it kind of evolved into something different.
Yeah, and so you're living in Seattle, and now I know. So, how far away did you live from the training center in the Seahawks training center? It's in Renton, right?
You know what's interesting? So we lived off of 405. You probably know the place enough well enough. The Seahawks training center was like exit 5 or 6,
Yeah.
and we lived off of exit 4. So it was just like 2 miles, 3 miles away, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there, and that makes sense because I was like trying to figure out, looking at you. You have an old Twitter, and I was reading through it, and there's like a ton of Seahawks banter.
I forgot I have a Twitter thing.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. I will maybe link it. We'll see.
Don't link it. I'm afraid what I said 5 years ago.
Yeah, seriously.
Seriously.
No, it's all pretty clean. You're like, there's a lot of like gospel and Bible and Seahawks.
Okay.
And all super clean. And so I was like looking through. I was like, why is this guy who lives in Boise, Idaho, who I can tell has come from Russia, a Seahawks and a Mariners fan? And it makes total sense. So
yeah. It makes total sense. He's an immigrant, doesn't know English that well. He doesn't know good sports.
He can hold a sports flag and then root for a team. So no, it's awesome. And so did you ever gone to the training center?
Never have gone to the training center. Went to a handful of NFL games, but no, never gone to the training center. I don't like, how people go like, oh man, to be 19 again or to be 21 again. You know what I mean? Like those are like their heydays or glory days. To me, I feel like my brain didn't mature until I was like maybe 26. Like I got married at 25, and I think between 25 and 26 is when I finally started like something clicked where I was like, stop overdrafting your checking account. You know what I mean? Start, courting girls and not just dating them. So it's like, there's a lot of maturity that started happening. So I tend to not like to revisit my life before the age of like 25.
I think we're just hitting our prime right now. So
100%. 100%.
Sure.
I'm excited for 40 and 50, to be honest with you, because I was like, I think I'm going to make a little bit better choices.
Same.
Same here.
Yeah. So you get married, and you have your degree, and then you uproot yourself to Boise, Idaho. And
3 days after I graduated.
Yeah. So like, how did that work for you? You're like graduating, where most people are probably looking for local jobs, trying to figure themselves out. Did you already know you were going to move to Boise? Were you putting applications out into the area?
It didn't put applications. So I graduated, and in healthcare, for whatever you do, you got to take your boards, right? After you graduated. And so I graduated 3 days later. My wife and I were doing a long distance thing. I think we saw each other 6 times, which is my shortest relationship ever in my life, before we got married.
Wow.
And we can get into that if you guys want to. But then, so when we got married, we moved here. Her parents had a rental property. She was like, my dad has a granite company. You can work with him. So I started working with him. And I think we were broke, right? I mean, even working with the father-in-law, it's not like he was throwing me a bone. Like I was making what I would make probably full-time working at Target or something. Yeah. And being a person that school doesn't come easy, taking my boards, I had a lot of anxiety because I have testing anxiety where like, if I'm taking a test and I see in my peripheral vision, people getting up and like being done, all of a sudden my brain doesn't work anymore. I can't read. I'm reading the sentences like 12 times over. It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? I get in that headspace. I'd probably be a better test taker if I had like headphones on or something like that. And so I was that was like a thing that I was afraid to do. I was like, I got to take my boards. I'm so scared to take my boards. And so I took my boards, I flunked, took my boards again, I passed. And then I took my secondary stuff to be a registered from a certified, and failed it like 3 times, but then finally got it. And then after that, I got a job in the industry of healthcare as a respiratory therapist. But yeah, no, it was it was just like, we just knew that I just knew I didn't want to raise my kids in Seattle. I guess it's not that we already had kids, but like we're going to get married and we're going to start a family. And I definitely didn't want to do that in Seattle. I wanted to do it in a more family friendly place like Idaho.
And your wife had roots there, family. So,
yeah.
Growing a family and that's why my wife and I moved from Seattle back home here to Pennsylvania, because like you gotta have some roots around you to help. So
you don't just jump into a place that you don't know anything about as a middle ground, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. So it sounded like there was a good story about you're getting married to your wife. I'd love to hear that. That's awesome. Because
Well, I mean, it was
huge on your wife. Like a lot of like this beautiful girl. I'm so happy to be with her. Like a lot of tweets about this.
Yeah. No, she's we've been married for 9 years now. Yeah, we met at she came down to Seattle at a mutual friend. You know, the Russian community or Japanese community or Chinese community, anybody, they always have a community there, right? And if so I was in this, Slavic community of friends, and there was a mutual birthday party. She showed up to Seattle with a couple of her girlfriends because they wanted to do New Year's over there. I decided to play wingman for my buddies. Nobody was being bold enough to like kind of pursue it and her or anybody. And so I kind of, we exchanged a few little flirty jokes back and forth. And you kind of, you have these moments where you meet somebody and you go, it's going to take me some time to figure out that if you're a really, a diamond in the rough or a gem. And then there's other people you go like, no, I got to find something. There has to be something wrong with you because you can't be this perfect and not taken. And so that was the case with her. I was like, I don't get it. Drop dead gorgeous, hilarious, easygoing. What's the deal? Like, what am I missing here? Like, do you have somebody buried somewhere? Like, what's you're not a stage 5 clinger. Like, what's going on? And
I'm in pyramid schemes.
Yeah. And you know what she tells me? She goes, I used to be a heavy girl. And I go, oh, I got to see this. And so all these guys, they knew her that I was playing wingman for. They knew her during her, we call it fluffy days. Well, that's what she calls it. I don't call it that. And so I was the lucky contestant that, she, and I was a chubby kid growing up myself. And so we're just two McDonald's loving kids that like later on realized we should change our, our appearances. And fortunately we're there right time. Crazy fun person. She's the same person today. I think we've been married for 2 years. We have 3 kids. We went through 2 moves, 2 graduations, multiple career changes. We lost a house to a fire, wow, when our first kid was 2 weeks old. And I think with all of that, and we started businesses with all of that, I think we maybe fought 3 times in our life. So it's like,
that's awesome.
We saw each other 6 times. I wouldn't recommend that to people. I think you need to date some people that you shouldn't be dating just to realize how quickly you can pick up on a person that's not a person you want to be with. And then after that, I think it's a lot easier to find quality people.
Yeah. No, I was listening to the podcast that's done by you two, which is called is it called the Good
Next Door Neighbors
podcast? Next Door Neighbors podcast. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries.
But I was listening to the episode that was discussing the start of your YouTube channel and the start of Mr. Build It. And one of the things that stuck out to me was how supportive you guys seem to be with each other all the times, even in those hard times when, you're really strapped for cash and you get a check that comes in surprise. And her first response is, go buy some tools with it. Go spend that money on something that's going to build up your channel. Cause I'm in it with you 100%. Like, we're sharing the stream, and that's really cool. That's something that you don't find too often. I admire that a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always try to put it in perspective of like what's going on in my life and how can I explain that to other people, what to maybe look for. Like if I was to talk to my kids when they grew up, like my goal is to one day like meet somebody like your mother, but how do I articulate that? And what's interesting about Irina is that somehow she presents herself like I never had to sell her on a dream. Somehow, ever since we went from making $1,500 a month between 3 of us, me, her, and our oldest boy, to now where we are right now, living, I would say, a comfortable life. And it somehow along the way, she always presented herself where like I was always the hero in her story. And when somebody looks at you that way, when you're broke, but you're trying, I think, and you're the hero in their eyes, and you recognize that you're the hero in their eyes, you want to do nothing else in your life but to impress them. And I say this all the time, like the money that she tells me all the time, she's like, I was with you before you had money. And so like I jokingly, but the reality is like, I still try to impress her, right? I still be like, hey, guess what? We're getting published in Better Homes and Garden or whatever. And I want nothing else but to see her reaction. I don't care what my buddies think. I don't care what people on social media be like, oh my gosh, I saw you on this. I don't care about that. To me, I'm like, I cannot wait to tell her, hey, like this is what happened or that would happen. And somehow still 9 years later, she still makes it look like I'm the quarterback. Like, and I think that's what, I think that's very hard to find. And I'm just glad I found it.
That's an extremely hard thing to find, especially in this day and age of like so many, I don't know, there's so many catfish kind of items on the internet and dating like that. I feel like these natural, especially in 2020, early 2021 now, you're not having those natural parties of it's like, hey, let's get together with friends and you find some connection like that. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't know how to follow that up with another question because that is
that. Go for it. No, go for it. Hey, listen, that's how my brain works, right? Be like, hey guys, what's up with cancer, right?
Yeah. Hey, so I've got one from the Twitter feed. Do you still have Old George? And is Old George the 1964 Ford Custom Cab still going to go to your sons?
Man, you really dug back on that Twitter, man. That's like going on your iCloud and finding pictures from when you first got married. That is old. I was like, who's George? And I was like, oh, that's right. That was a stuffed animal I gave my wife and she called it George. Oh, you know what? As cute as it is, we have Old George. It's in our boys' bunk bedroom and they still cuddle with it. But I forgot that the name was George. I don't remember that for so long, but yeah, George, yeah. And then the 1964 F100. No, unfortunately, I had a season in my life where when I was still broke, did a lot of bartering, and I did the Craigslist barter thing. So I got a Ford Explorer that was a retired sheriff's car, and I traded that in, bartered it for that Ford the F100 1964. And then I bartered that truck for like a Volkswagen Jetta that they only made like 2,000 of them, like a rare ones. And then after that, I bartered it for a Wrangler, and then I sold a Wrangler and got a truck. So like it took like a lot of progressions, but yeah, as sad as it sounds, but at the same time, I think one day I do want to get a project car that my kids can have, and so we're kind of looking at like one of those Ford Roadsters, like a 1930 Roadster or something like that. So
cool.
Yeah,
it'd be cool to do what you didn't really get the chance to do with your dad with your kids now, right?
Yes.
Like work on the car and do that together.
Yes.
We really need
Yeah. As sad as it sounds, maybe I'm sure, I'm sure my dad did the best he knew, based off the resources that he had and not dealing with the things in his life. Because my dad grew up without a father too, so it's like he had to kind of figure out. But my wife always says like, hey, how is that you're such a, and this is her words, not mine, it's a humble brag on my end, but like, how are you such a good dad to them when you had a bad upbringing? And I think there's people that you meet that say the buck stops here, and you do basically the 100% opposite of what was done with you. So that's my agenda and my plan. So hopefully I can bring that into fruition.
I mean, seems to be doing it right. Like even just through your videos, your kids come in, like when you're building the shower, your son's in there helping you.
Yeah.
It's something you see, and your Instagram, all of your social medias are about your family, and it's clearly about that. I mean, even your website that is under construction. I'm hoping coming soon, right? And you can see like it's not Mr. Build It, it's Mr. Build It and Mrs. Designs It, right?
Yeah, Mr. Style It. Yeah, but the whole thing is Mr.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely, you're right there. Like it's Mr. Build It and Co. And I post nothing but things that are part of my life. And it's like somebody asked me recently, like, what do you want to do with your kids? Like my biggest fear in life is to fail my kids. That's my biggest fear. Like it's because my wife, she's already on board. She's impressed. She's whatever. And I'm just going to keep impressing her. But my kids, it's like, my fear is that like, I'm going to fail them. Like I'm going to miss an opportunity where I should have been there to help them develop. Like my oldest boy, school comes easy, but my youngest boy, he can't memorize his sight words. So like, to me, I'm like, okay, cool, dude. Before screen time, guess what? We're going to run down through your sight words, and I'm going to have more patience than mom because I know how your brain works. It's like my brain, for every 5 words you get, we're going to go dig a hole because you want to go dig holes. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my biggest fear is to like, not let them, but like, you'll hear them go like, hey dad, one day I want to be a YouTuber. I go, cool, be a YouTuber, but let's go get a plan B. What's going to be your degree before you become a YouTuber? Because you're gonna have to put out quite a bit of content and you have to get your bills paid, like Beckham, he wants to be a scientist, and I'm like, listen, man, scientists have to know their sight words, you know.
Yeah. Even if he likes digging holes, he could be a geologist, get out there, but you still
Geology, yeah,
got to know your sight words for sure.
Jack wants to be a gamer, and I'm like, okay, listen, I don't really play games. There's a last podcast that we were talking about on Next Door Neighbors, and I was talking to Irina about how I'm not a gamer, never was a gamer at all. My oldest brother is. I tried it. I had an Xbox 10 years ago, didn't get into it, sold it, whatever, Call of Duty. And then now seeing how much my kids are into games, I'm like, they're only going to get more into games. And to me, I used to be frustrated, be like, come on, like, go do something, go get creative, go use imagination. And now I'm like, okay, so they're 7 and 5. Well, when they become 11 and 9 or whatever, they're only going to get even more into video games. And then 16 and 14, they're going to get even more into video games. So I was like, I want to be part of their life so much that I'm like, I'm going to turn myself into whatever you're into right now. So like, what did I do? I went and bought a PlayStation 5 and I got Call of Duty, and I'm like, all right, dudes, we're playing, because I want one day for my kid to, you know, to hopefully call me his best friend. You know what I mean? As you know, as sad as that might sound, but like, it's just that I want to be that person for them that my dad was never for me. And that's my, I guess, example that I go off.
No, that's awesome. I think just that awareness of that self-awareness is a huge step in that right direction. That's awesome about the video games too, though, because you hear so many parents saying like, it's not good for you, but sort of embracing it and recognizing that, especially now, you know, you can make livings out of these things that 20 years ago would have been inconceivable to us. Me, a 10-year-old playing Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1. I'm like, you would I told you that I would have, I don't know, become president before I would have ever been able to become a professional video game player. But that's just 20 years ago. You know, that's only 20 years ago. So imagine what kind of jobs there will be in that sector 20 years from now.
Yeah. Did you guys ever watch the show Breaking Bad?
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah,
okay,
for sure.
So it's a surprise, but I never got into it, and we just started watching, so we're like season 2 in it, right?
Oh my god!
And you know, season 1, you see Jesse, right? This Aaron Paul, by the way, who I've seen at our cabin area. Apparently, he has a place over here in Idaho. Yeah. But there's these scenes where he's, you know, going back to his parents because he's a druggy kid and stuff like that. And my wife looked at me and she goes. And, you know, he was such, you know, spiraling out of control that his parents kind of separated themselves from him. And my wife said, she goes, what would you do if your kid was like that? And I had no answer except the fact that I was like, I have to do everything in my life right now to make sure I never do anything to push my kids away. And if me constantly going, stop thinking about video games, would you stop playing video games, go do something more creative, and instead change, you know, hold them to a standard for sure, but also change myself a little bit, be like, if that's what you're interested in, I have to make sure I'm interested as well. Therefore, you and I can share this interest when you develop and grow in your life, that hopefully one day I can catch you as, you know, bad company shows up and you turn into a character like Jesse. Like, that's already too far. Like, I got to make sure I'm still in your life to make sure I could pivot you a little bit when you're swaying a little bit.
No, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I love the sentiment. Cool. I have the same thoughts of my son upstairs. I can't wait till he can hop on a surfboard. This is my dad's surfboard. I have a different relationship with my dad. I run with my dad 3 times a week. He's like my best friend.
Incredible.
I hope I have that side that I'm like, I want this relationship I have with my dad to be the same with my son. And that it is, my son's sleeping, hopefully, and I want the same. You described everything there. Like, if he wants to play video games and you want to drive him to be the best, like you want to play video games, well, you're only going to be the guy that you see on TV if you do it. And I think starting a YouTube channel shows the work ethic. And I think that Drew and I talk about this a lot. There's a wrong precedent in the world where kids are looking at people and they're like, oh, he made $1 million at that tournament. They don't realize the sacrifice that kid made. Yeah, he made $1 million. He's the star, but he didn't hang out with any of his friends, and he played video games and he worked at it. The guy who you see on YouTube or on TikTok, they work at this to do it. This is a full-time job for you. And I think this can be our transition to like YouTube. So you get to Boise, you're in your job, you finally, pass your boards, pass all your classes or the test, you get your job and you decide to leave this job that you worked so hard to get to go start a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Why was that choice there? And like, let's walk through like the hardship of getting through to 515,000 subscribers.
Yeah. So I got my career. I got my first big. Well, I've had my first job, and that's cool. I got it, and then I finally got my first job at a big hospital. So I have opportunities to work, and I have worked my career of 7 years in respiratory therapy. I did NICU, ICU, ER. I've did a lot of stuff, and one thing I've noticed at the end of the day, there's an opportunity cost, right? So like, there's people in certain roles in life with careers where they're pretty high up in the chain of command, that money comes with there with that role, um, and not necessarily the freedoms, but money definitely comes. And what I realized with like respiratory therapy, some of the money came. It was definitely better, but it wasn't that great money. Which fine, we were still within our means and stuff like that. But one thing that I saw was that there's an opportunity cost that I was missing, which meaning my kids were little. I worked night shifts and stuff like that, and I would work every other weekend. And so here's these pivotal moments where my kids are like learning to ride their bike without training wheels, and and get to experience the firsts in their life. And I wasn't there because I'm working 12 and a half hour shifts. And so to me, the way I kind of looked at it, I was like, this sucks, right? Because you can give me a $40,000 bonus right now, but it's not necessarily that I can go and spend that extra 40,000 on my kids and doing stuff like going boating and stuff like that, because I can't be there. I have to be here. And I was getting really grown sick and tired of the fact that like I have to give up. This is what my life will look like. I have to work weird hours. Yeah, I might have Wednesday and Thursday off, but you know what happens on Wednesday, Thursdays? My kids are in school. You know what I mean? And so all these things, all of a sudden, you put in perspective, be like, why did I get a job and start a career in an industry that never turns the lights off? Right? The hospital never turns its lights off.
Yeah.
Every other place does. This place doesn't. And so, but to pull it back a little bit, the YouTube part didn't start because I saw that I wasn't spending time and I had to find something. It was more like we got married, we were broke. She wanted the nice things, just like any wife would. They want to make a house a home. And so we couldn't afford it. So I was like, well, let me see. I bet you I can make that, because I saw that my dad was very handy and capable. He never taught me how to build things, but I saw the fact that he wasn't trained, but he figured out. And I thought there's this parallel, this idea that you can figure it out, because I saw that he just figured it out. And so I tried a coffee table, tried a set of shelves on the wall. And then that just kind of led, like it was when, like going back to the whole thing of like when your wife thinks you are the quarterback of the squad, all of a sudden you go, hey, I built this. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And she shares with her friends. You go, all right, I'm the hero of the day. and then you try to outdo it again. And you go, oh, you like barn doors? She's like, yeah, barn doors. Oh my gosh, so incredible. They're like $1,000. You're like, I bet you I can build that. And then you build it, and then you screw up, and then you try to build it again. And then she goes, wow, I can't believe this. And she shares it, and you go, and you get this little boost again. So it's just constantly kept feeding it. And then I just kept doing it over and over. And then to the point where like I was, excited about learning new skill set. I was excited about making a house, a home that my wife was excited about. Because when you get married, everybody knows you can't just go buy a fancy house. So that kind of turned into that. That started Mr. Build It. And then it was when your question was how, the road to 515,000 subscribers.
Well, stop you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
What
Go
was
ahead.
you're building these things for your wife to make your house a home. But what was the first thing that, like, there's a difference between like, hey, I'm going to build you a coffee table, and hey, I'm going to set up a couple cameras in the living room, and I'm going to film myself cutting up wood and gluing it together, and I'm going to talk to the camera while I do it. So when did you transition from I'm going to build something to I'm going to film myself building this?
Okay, so I started, fortunately, every social media platform has a community. So because the community that I was part of was like we'll call woodworking, I just joined everybody that I could find that does woodworking stuff, like that's inspirational. So I'd follow, and then see how they did stuff and learn from it, reverse engineer it, and then DM them like, hey, how do I do this? And they go, you do. So that was a learning process behind it. And then when you follow enough people, you start seeing there's people who just put out content because they're just another enthusiast in their garage. And then there's people out there who are writing things like hashtag sponsored. And you go, oh, I remember Brad Rodriguez is one guy in our space, Fix This Build That, great channel. And he was the guy that like kind of started our industry of the DIY space. Corporate guy, jumped into it. He's now a good buddy of mine and a mentor in the space. And he would, write this hashtag sponsored by Rigid. And I was like, I told him, I was like, hey, I think there's people out here who get free tools. Now, I didn't think there's a paycheck involved. I was like, they get free tools, they're sponsored. And I told Irina, I was like, hey, my goal one day, I was like, I'm going to do this. And I want to do it like 100% for 4 years, 110%, with the hopes that one day I can get some free tools. And I've been doing it for 6 years. You know what I mean? And so now I get a little bit more than free tools. But like there's this jump where I recognize that. And then December of 2016, I was like, my buddy who's a photographer, he goes, you need to get on YouTube. And I was like, dude, here I am trying to learn woodworking and learn how to use these tools. And now I have to learn how to use a camera for like quality pictures for Instagram. And now I have to learn video. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to learn how to use the bandsaw and create bandsaw boxes. I want to use proper joinery, learn how to use proper joinery and dovetails. And I don't care about. And so lo and behold, like slowly after being consumed by it, I was like, okay, January or 2016, I was like, my New Year's resolution is to get on YouTube. So January, I think 2nd, I was like, we're putting out our first YouTube video. And I just bought this fancy sander or Rotex from festival. And I was like, I did my first like 5-minute video. Like, so I got this thing and here's what's cool about it. And here's what sucks about it. It's just like, nobody watched that video. Right. But it was that first video. And then after you get your feet wet, you do it, all of a sudden you go, all right, one more video. And then I got really consumed by Gary Vaynerchuk. And he had this one line that he says, you're always one video away from making it big. So as an obsessive compulsive person, I had this thing now going, we're only one video away. So all the sacrifices came from that mantra of we're one video away. It was, hey, the boys have their first T-ball game today. I can't because I got to get this video done. I was doing every week a video. So I was doing 4 videos a month. And I was like building and editing myself and publishing. I was like, I can't, I got to get this video done. So I did that for like 2 years straight, 4 videos a month. And then, I finally hit it. I hit that one video. You're one video away. And that's what took it off.
I want to go back to January 2nd, 2017, the first video.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because I was looking at your channel, which was started on all days of Christmas.
Yeah.
12/25, 2016. I was like, that's so interesting. Where was the motivation? Like, hey, it's Christmas. Let's start our YouTube channel now.
Yeah. I made a list of New Year's resolutions, and I don't remember too many things on it. I think one of them said come back on drinking or something like that, and like one of them said like get on YouTube. And then I think and so I don't remember too many of them. And so that was one of the things. It's like, okay, Christmas holidays is over. It's like, okay, let's look at New Year's resolutions. Let's talk execution. First thing it is, you just got to do it. Okay, let's just put out a video. It doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be anything, but let's just do it. And that's how that motivation started. It's on the list. I have a lot of rules I have to follow just to keep my brain straight. And that was the prime example. It was like, the rule is we have to put out a video because you said you'd put out a video because it's on the list. If it's on the list, it has to get crossed out because how else are you going to be satisfied in life if something on a list is not scratched out?
Yeah. So you're grinding, right? You're doing 4 videos a week for 2 years.
Yeah.
And you're editing, filming, doing everything, missing T-ball games. Yeah. Basically back in the same position that you were when you didn't want to be there. And what's it like at that point? How many subscribers did you get over the first year, 2 years?
Oh, I think for the first year, I think I got to like 1,000. 1,000. It was such a slow race where when I hit 100,000, I hit 100,000. I think last winter or the year before that, and then that was like on a January, and then from January to like end of February, I gained another 100,000.
Wow.
And then 2 months later, I hit like another 200. You know what I mean? So it was like, I definitely just like kept just doing videos until one video hit, just like Gary Vee said, is like you're one video away. It hit, it sparked fire to the rest of the, like maybe I think 6 videos that were semi decent. And then it put everything nuclear, and it just expedited everything. And then next thing you know, you have an audience, and now it's, you kind of go, okay, because I did that, and that project, those worked. So let's just do more of that. But before stuff like that happens, you don't know what works.
Yeah.
So you're just experimenting. Sometimes it's just a one-hit wonder kind of thing. You just, all the stars were just aligned. And so, yeah, it's just, I get excited when people say, hey, I'm a, I want to start a YouTube channel. Like, what insights do you have? And I tell them, but then I also preface it with like, listen, man, you got to get into a very dark place in your mind to say, we're going to work. Like that's what you got to do.
Yeah, that was one thing that stuck out again from the podcast episode that you did with your wife about starting this channel was you said that you went into it thinking, I'm going to give it 4 years, like 4 to 5 years where I am fully 120% committed to it, to borrow your own words. And to me, I'm thinking that's a lot of time, like 4 or 5 years, that's a lot of time to dedicate to a project. But like you said, I think you have to not only get yourself into that sort of dark place, but be prepared that it might get even darker, that you're gonna have to work. There's gonna be times when you just want to be like, it's over. It's not going anywhere. But
and you know what doesn't pair well? And you'll know why that was on my New Year's resolution list. What doesn't pair well was when you're starting. I'm a man of rules that I have to follow, and one of the rules is I only read my YouTube comments for the first 12 hours. That's it. And what doesn't pair well is a new YouTube content creator who is trying to make it and is constantly putting things out, who has a few drinks and then starts reading his YouTube comments. The meanest things people say, because you're such a vulnerable person when you build something, shoot it, edit it. So you double created 2 things and you put out for the world for people to see you. And then you get shat on, because that's past tense for getting shitted on, right?
Yeah.
and there was moments where my wife was sitting on the couch after she's drinking her little Pinot Grigio, and she sees me going to this dark place, and she goes, why are you even doing this? She goes, just stop making videos if this is bothering you so much.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of go like, I either quit doing this, quit trying, or I figure out ways how to deal with it. And there's nothing I could do mentally to be like, oh, the person who's writing these mean stuff, I bet you he had a bad upbringing and he's got their own bitterness. I bet you they work at a job that they hate anyways, and blah, 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 blah. Winners don't. But I couldn't get that realization in my head. Instead of what I had to be like, no, there's rules. 12 hours, because the first 12 hours is going to be the people who are your fans, who are followers, who are subscribers. They're going to give you insight, input, whatever. After that, the trolls come out. And sometimes you'll get a troll in the midst of that 12 hours just to be a dick. But so those are the rules I hold fast to. And they kept my mind, my brain sane for enough time now.
Yeah. So I think when you I think the trolls really come out when you break your threshold. So like if you're 100,000 subscribers and your video gets 250, after you hit like 75,000 is when the trolls really come. So you have 6 videos over 1 million views, one of which I think has 2.5. I'm not on that. I'm going to call it 2.5, but
okay. I think the highest one was even more than that.
I think I have a 5, 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, sorry, 5.1.
5.1.
It's okay. No, it's
2.3, sorry. So you're slogging, you're doing all this, and what's that for 2 feelings I want to talk about? The feeling of getting the 100,000 plaque, and the feeling of hitting your first 1 million views. What are those? What are those feelings like?
Oh man, it's unreal, to be completely honest with you. But I think because there's so few and far between, that I get more jazzed. Like the high that I'm chasing is video day high. So today was a video day high, meaning today was we're releasing a video today, and it's like let's say you want to start a business and you go, and your wife's on board, and you go, okay, we're doing it, tomorrow's day 1, and you got all the finances. And so you're so optimistic. It could be it could be a viral video or it could not be. And so you're so giddy about like, I don't know where it's going to be, but you're so excited because it's that TGIF thank God it's Friday feeling, to it's Christmas, to we're moving into a new place, to the feeling the girls get when they grow out bangs or they cut their bangs or they color their hair. Like, it's just like, it's a new year, it's a new me. I'm excited. And so that's the high that I chase. The hitting the 1 million part, it was interesting with me. I heard somebody say this. I listen to a lot of podcasts of stand-up comedians because my communication language is humor, so I listen to those guys. And they said, they were talking about Joe Rogan, and somebody's talking about Joe Rogan about how they said there's people in life that when they get money, they either stay the same exact person or they become a complete asshole. There's no better from that. There's not a lot of people who go, they got money and all of a sudden they're more generous. It's more of like, they got money, all of a sudden they think they're the shit. And so with me, I noticed that every time a video surpassed a certain threshold, it humbled me more, where I kind of just sat back and be like, my wife would be the person to be like, oh my gosh, did you see your video? And of course I saw, right? It's not like I'm not studying my numbers every single minute of my life, but it's more of like seeing her excitement kind of puts me naturally in my place, be like, I know, it's insane that people are watching. So it's just, there's nothing cooler than your family celebrating it. And then when somebody else mentions it, you just kind of crumple up in a ball and be like, I know, right? So, because you're trying to keep yourself, be like, just keep it cool. Don't laugh at your own joke. Keep it cool.
Yeah.
That's
But you
feeling.
have those moments in life where you kind of have the objective third-party awareness where you're like, this is a very cool moment. Like, I'm involved in something very cool right now. Yeah,
no, it's 100%. It 100% is. And everything that comes with that is the coolest part. Like, my coolest moments, again, it goes back to like, if you have a healthy living situation in your family, when like, I don't care if somebody goes, oh man, Mr. Build It, what's up, man? Like, I follow you, like locally. What's the coolest to me if like my wife is around and they say, hey, Mr. Build It, I follow you. And then she feels like I'm Brad Pitt or something like that. And like, to me, that's cool, right? Because I was a loser in high school and I don't care about talking to my, anybody else and prove them that like, hey, I made something of myself. To me, it's the coolest thing is to going back to impressing my wife and kids. Like, the fact that my kids wear my merch, like, I don't make kid merch at all, but I make 2 of everything because for them, because they keep asking for it. And like, my boys will go to school and Mr. Build It hoodies and hats.
Oh, that's cool.
And I never ask them, but they do it. And I'm freaking Batman in their eyes, and that's all I care about, and so that's the coolest part to me.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
So I want to know how you scored and came up with the name Mr. Build It. I feel like that had to have been taken. Like it seems so crazy.
So I was totally gonna ask that question too, just in reference to that same podcast, because you mentioned never being asked that by anybody.
I wish, and I always kick myself. I'm like, because I'm starting to go on different people's podcasts because now I have a podcast and more people. Before, people reached out to be on their podcast, I'm like, sorry, I don't have time. I'm making YouTube videos. And now that I have a podcast, I'm like, cool. Can I promote my podcast? Is that cool? You know what I mean? And so I always go back to like, okay, so when people ask how I came up with the name, what do I tell them? And I wish I had a cool story where like it's a superhero or something like that, but I don't. It was me in my backyard with my wife, and I told her, I was like, listen, too many good things. I don't know if you believe in God or the universe or fortune or whatever. I'm like, for some reason, everything keeps turning up. Like opportunities keep arising, whether you networked or whatever. Like, it's just things are happening. And though you'll still have days or months of like money is a problem, but somehow money always resolves. Like, think about it. Like, we've all had money problems in our lives, right? But somehow time has gone by and that's not a problem anymore. Like, it passes. Somehow it figured itself out. So I kept having way too many of these moments where things kept figuring themselves out. And so where am I going with this? It's we were sitting with my wife in the backyard and I was like, things keep figuring themselves out. I was like, I think I need to do this thing and give it 110% for 4 years just to make sure I gave it my shot and see where it leads us. And then my wife's like, what are you going to come up with a name? And for some weird reason, and I don't know if because I was newly married or whatever, but I was like, the whole Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, that assassin movie that they
Yeah.
are like married together. Somehow that stood in the back of my mind, just Mr. Smith. It had nothing to do with build or anything, but I was like, let's do that tied into like a proprietary thing to like a thing they're doing, build it. And we played around different logos, and then it was Mr. Dash built it, Mr. just hyphenated. So it went to different things, but Mr. Build It. I think the biggest turn that happened was the mantra that came part of the logo was the courage and sweat part. I think I have a better story behind that. And the way that happened was I started listening to a lot of like Jocko Willink and Cam Hanes and who's that other crazy psychotic guy that's their buddy
David Goggins.
David Goggins,
David
right?
Goggins, yeah.
I started
cool
listening and
listen
podcast, and I just got into running, right? So here I'm listening to this guy, you know, talk about calling yourself a bitch and stuff like that. And so here I am, like, got in this mindset of just doing difficult, hard things, and so here I'm listening to all these veterans, and so I became what I call a bullet bunny. I'm a bullet bunny of all these like veterans, and people are doing these difficult, hard things, and so I was like, okay, toughness, hard stuff. What ties in between being a hero like that and taking on intimidating things? Okay, and then somehow we landed on courage and sweat, and I think I have just a little bit more story of that than I do of the Mr. Bullman part.
Yeah,
I
love listening to stuff like that too.
Yeah,
I like listening to I was listening to Alan Watts, which I guess he doesn't really do podcasts, but because they're just lectures from the 60s. But you were talking about sort of things just happening, and he was talking about just like how the idea of living your life like you breathe, and the concept that if you try and hold on to your breath, inevitably your body's just going to shut down and expel it out, just the way that you can't really try and hold on to things in life. But if you just sort of open yourself up and embrace what is out there, like everything that's outside of you, you inevitably always have air to breathe in. And at the same time, there's just something inside of us that's always going to breathe for us too, which is also very cool. But
it's also
I love stuff like that.
That's very beautifully put. I mean, it's so true. And I was just thinking about this the other day driving. It's like, if Mr. Build It shuts down tomorrow because I get canceled because of something I said or did or whatever, like, I have zero fear. Like, I'm a firm believer. Like, I tell my kids to go to college and stuff like that. I sometimes use the wrong terms of having a plan B, but it's more of like a stepping stone. You need to have a stepping stone that will pay your bills, right? Like, get a job that pays $25 an hour as opposed to getting a job that pays $15 an hour working at Target. Like, get a stepping stone before you do your thing. But I'm anti plan B, because I think when somebody has a plan B, they don't work as hard to keep their neck above water. Versus if somebody has a plan B, they go, oh, you know what? I'm going to dick around. I'm going to do this. And fine. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to go back to it. But what I tell all my creator buddies, like the DIY space that we're in, and I have a lot of friends who are way more successful than I am. And fortunately, I had them on our podcast, and we were talking about it, how there's nothing special about me at all. Like, I'm just a charismatic guy that just kind of has these weird electric shock ideas in my mind. But there's nothing, my ideas are not great. I'm not an innovator. I didn't reinvent the chair or the wheel or anything. To me, I just have a firm believing is that I burnt my bridge when I left the hospital. I burnt it on purpose. I threw gasoline over it, and I sparked it with a match, because that is what fuels me every single day to work harder than the next person in my industry. And that is what makes me wake up at 5:30 in the morning, because I can work more while my kids are away and sleeping. And then when they wake up and I work out and I take them to school and I drop them off intentionally, because I want to be front and center in their face for the rest of their life. And then I make sure I go and we film, we edit, we shoot till 3. After that's done, I make sure I go pick them up. Again, I'm front and center, because these are the things that make me happy. And I'm going to make sure I outwork the next guy every single day.
Yeah, we talked to a guy named Michael Downey, and I never had heard someone say that. When he was thinking about starting his YouTube channel, he got the worst job he could physically possibly do that would pay his bills, because he's like, if I get something nice with my degree and get comfortable, I'm never going to accomplish my goals. And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. You have to put yourself in a situation where you're like, I'm suffering. And then he did the same thing. He burned the bridge. He literally pulled up to a job site and he's like, I hate this. I'm leaving, and left.
Yeah.
And just went into the office and said, here's the keys. I'm done. It's over.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's an incredible thing. And it's 100% true, man. Like, don't have a plan B. And that's going to make you go, there's no turning back. There's no turning back. I'm going to obsess about every minute of why are people not watching my YouTubes longer? Why are people not liking? Why are they not following? Like I mean, you could see, I have maybe about 80 or 90 videos in my library, and you can look at my earlier videos and they were dog crap. They were. And where I'm now, I'm a little bit more happier with it. I get to do cool things for people and stuff like that. And so there's a progression that happens, along the way. And you got to be like, I'm only going to get better, and I'm going to make sure I get better. And the people that I hired, the videographer, and now we just hired Tyler, who builds with me to make sure we put out more videos.
Awesome.
We every time a video is done, we have a creative meeting where we say, hey, what went good and what can we do better, because we're only going to get better.
Well, so you mentioned it a couple times already, and it seems like you were referencing it there, but doing cool stuff for cool people now with your channel. Tell us about your most recent video that you just uploaded today.
Yeah, so the video was, I've always had one thing on the list that I've always wanted to do is, being as patriotic of a guy as I am, I wanted to surprise a veteran with some kind of remodel. And we found Jeremy and Allie. Jeremy did like 8 tours in Iraq, in Afghanistan, machine gunner, incredible. And we did a thing where they were out of town. We borrowed their house. I secretly plotted this with his wife. And we remodeled his basement bathroom, like that's next to his man cave. And I mean, we just turned something that was built in 1993, and we turned into something that like could be on Pinterest kind of thing. And then we get to share his story. Like, I wanted him to, after it was all done, we did an interview thing about, tell me about your time in Afghanistan and in service. And he was away for the majority of the time that his kids were born, and they bought a house and stuff like that. And I love the fact that we get to do stuff like that. We did a video for a single mom and surprised her with a custom farmhouse dining room table. My wife staged it for her, got everything for her, and we gave their kids like $1,000 for Christmas money. And it was just like, it was the coolest experience of my life, where I was like, if I'm in a position where brands are paying me money to remodel my house, and then YouTube pays me money on top of that, why can't we just take this and do just nice things for other people and make a living off of that?
It's the Mr. Beast way. You spread the love the way you can and you're gonna organically grow like that. And you're doing it, and it's such a good thing to do. Like it's incredible. Give away 100 cars because he wants to give away 100 cars.
Yeah.
He does it because obviously it's gonna get 1 million or 2 million or 10 million views. But it's also like, I'm sure he started like, I'm gonna give this guy $100 because I want to do that.
100%. And it's one of those things where like some people might say, oh, you're doing it because of that. No, but like, if you can accomplish both, why not? I love reading comments where people be like, this is like feel good stuff. And in the time that we're living right now, where social media, smoking mirrors, and all this stuff, and whatever is happening politically, we need feel good stuff, man. And if because I can't do feel good stuff, I can't have my guys paid. I can't pay my videographer. I can't pay for these supplies. If it's just me doing it out of my pocket, be like, baby, we're taking money out of our savings account to do this. Like, it just can't happen. Like, we're going to go poor very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've built a heck of a community and a great repertoire. So 97 videos, 28 million views. It's an unbelievable accomplishment. But the reality is, in the past 2 years, it really looks like it's just the beginning. So I really, really, really look forward to where you guys go. I didn't listen to this podcast on the channel that you just talked about, Drew, about starting the YouTube channel, but I'm about to go shovel snow for about an hour and a half. So I'm going to listen to it right now.
Yeah, that's great.
I look forward to it. Dude, Alex, it was awesome to have you on our show. I can't thank you enough. And when Drew and I inevitably go back out to the West or go to Boise, we will swing by and do something really fun out there.
We'll take you to the sauna. We'll whip you guys up with some branches, make it weird.
Yeah,
Oh,
dude.
I'd love that. I'm
Well,
so
at
down
least
for that.
you told us about it, so it's not gonna be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just gotta say, I admire so much your emphasis on your family and doing good in the community. You know, there's a lot of ways to get views, and I think you can do it both ways. You can use that to do good in the world and make feel good content. And yeah, I admire especially your perspective on being a dad. It's very admirable. It's very cool.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
And everyone listening, if you made it this far, make sure you check out his podcast, which I'm going to go back and add another ad in the beginning for you, just because I think we want to highlight that very much. So check out his social media. His website will be revamped. Buy his merch. If you have kids, comment on his things to say we want kids merch, all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much, and we can't wait to catch up with you again at 1 million, maybe in 6 months. I don't know.
Thanks, Alex.
Hey, appreciate you guys. All right. See ya.